There are moments in life when you look back and realize that something inside you changed without warning, not because you wanted it to, not because you planned it, but because you reached a point where your heart could no longer carry the weight it was forced to hold. If you have ever been tied to a woman with strong narcissistic traits, you already understand that feeling in your bones, the confusion, the exhaustion, the silent battles no one else ever saw, and the slow fading of your own identity while you tried to hold everything together. This video walks you through what truly happens when someone with deep empathy finally stops caring, not in anger, not in revenge, but in a quiet, steady shift that feels like waking up after being asleep for far too long. You will see your own experience reflected in every part of this message, especially if you have ever been caught in a relationship where your kindness was used as a tool against you. The goal here is simple: help you understand what changed inside you, why it changed, and why that change is not a failure. It is a return to yourself. And once you understand this process, you will recognize your own strength in ways you may have forgotten. The hidden weight empaths carry. When you are an empath, you feel things deeply. You sense tension before words are spoken. You understand sadness without anyone explaining it. You try to fix what is broken in others because you see potential in people even when they show you their worst parts. This ability is beautiful, but it also puts you in danger when you meet someone who sees your empathy as something they can take from you without giving anything back. A narcissistic woman learns quickly how to tap into this part of you. She understands that you respond to emotional signals, so she creates them. She knows that you care about harmony, so she disrupts it. She knows you try to repair emotional wounds, so she deepens them. You start to carry both your feelings and hers. The more she demands, the more you give. The more she takes, the more guilty you feel for not giving enough. This dynamic grows quietly. It doesn't feel like control at first. It feels like responsibility. You try harder because you think the relationship will stabilize once she feels secure. But she was never looking for stability. She was looking for dominance, masked as emotional need. Your empathy becomes her supply, and your exhaustion becomes her comfort zone. Over time, you start losing small parts of yourself. You silence your needs. You downplay your pain. You ignore the early signs that something is wrong. You convince yourself that caring harder will fix it. And for a long time, you believe that narrative because it fits who you are. You help, you support, you hold space, you endure. But every empath has a limit, even if that limit is hidden deep inside. The breaking point. That isn't actually a breakdown. Most people think the moment an empath breaks looks dramatic, but it doesn't. There is no explosion, no shouting, no big argument. What happens instead is stillness, a moment of internal silence where something shifts. You stop fighting for a relationship that has only taken from you. You stop trying to explain your feelings to someone who uses them as ammunition. You stop trying to prove your worth to someone who never intended to acknowledge it. This is not weakness. It is clarity. When you reach this point, the exhaustion you've been carrying becomes impossible to ignore. Your nervous system stops reacting the way it used to. The part of you that absorbed every emotion finally shuts down. Not because you became cold, but because your mind and body reached a point where self-preservation became stronger than self-sacrifice. You stop caring in the way the narcissistic woman expects you to care. The old version of you, The one who kept giving second chances, explaining misunderstandings, offering forgiveness, calming storms, fades out. What replaces it is not bitterness. It is awareness. This is not a breakdown. This is a breakthrough. The moment you choose yourself. When an empath stops caring, something important happens internally. You begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were pushed away to keep the relationship functioning. You stop believing that love means carrying emotional weight that was never yours. You start seeing the difference between caring for someone and destroying yourself in the process. Choosing yourself feels strange at first. You might even feel guilty because narcissistic conditioning teaches you that your needs are burdens, that your boundaries are selfish, that your silence is disrespectful, that your distance is punishment. But none of that is true. What is actually happening is that you are finally acknowledging the truth. Not everyone deserves access to your heart. Not everyone deserves your forgiveness. Not everyone deserves your emotional labor. You realize that caring for yourself does not require permission. It requires honesty. And once you choose yourself, the control she had over you starts slipping away. Not because you resist, not because you fight, but because you no longer react. This is the moment your emotional chains break. Narcissistic collapse of control. A narcissistic woman depends heavily on the emotional responses of the person she targets. Your reactions feed her sense of importance. Your guilt confirms her power. Your fear strengthens her control. Your hope keeps you from leaving. When you stop caring, everything she built starts to fall apart. Her guilt tactics stop working. Her emotional outbursts feel empty. Her attempts to provoke you lose impact. Her manipulation becomes visible. Her charm feels forced. Her games no longer confuse you. This terrifies her more than anything else, because she never expected to lose control over your emotions. Narcissistic behavior only functions when the empath feels responsible for the narcissist's feelings. When that responsibility disappears, the entire relationship structure collapses. She may escalate, she may accuse, she may blame, she may bring up old memories, she may suddenly act sweet. She may pretend to take accountability. She may use silence. She may use anger. She may use tears. But none of this reaches you anymore, because your emotional door is closed. This is not cruelty. It is protection. Emotional detachment and psychological immunity. There comes a stage in your healing where something inside shifts in a way you cannot fully explain at first. It is slow, steady, and almost quiet. The emotional storms that once knocked you down begin to feel lighter. The patterns that used to overwhelm you no longer hold the same power. The reactions you once had, fear, guilt, confusion, fade into something that looks a lot like calm. It is not that you stop feeling. It is that you stop absorbing what was never yours to carry. You begin to understand the cycle you were trapped in, and the understanding itself becomes a form of protection. This is what emotional detachment really looks like. It is not coldness or indifference toward life. It is clarity about who deserves your energy and who does not. When someone has drained you long enough, your mind and body eventually build a natural defense. Your emotions begin to stabilize. Your thoughts become clearer. Your perspective becomes sharper. You begin to recognize the tactics that once pulled you in. You see the guilt tripping for what it is. You see the sudden sweetness for what it is. You see the subtle digs, the shifting blame, the silent treatments, and the emotional pressure with new eyes. None of it confuses you anymore, because the spell is gone. The part of you that used to bend to keep the peace no longer does. The part of you that felt guilty for saying no now feels grounded, and the part of you that once tried to heal her pain now understands that it was never your responsibility. This is what psychological immunity feels like. You are no longer fragile. You are no longer vulnerable in the same ways. You are no longer someone who can be emotionally manipulated through confusion or guilt. Your system has learned from the pain. Your mind has adapted, not by shutting down your empathy, but by protecting it. You finally see the difference between love and control. You finally see the difference between effort and exploitation. You finally see that no amount of caring can change someone who wants to stay the same. And once that realization settles inside you, it becomes a turning point you never forget. Clarity without hate. Reaching clarity is not about becoming hardened or angry. It is about reaching a point of emotional honesty that no longer depends on her reaction, her approval, or her narrative. You stop fighting for your side of the story. You stop trying to make her see your pain. You stop trying to get closure from someone who uses your vulnerability against you. Instead, the clarity arrives in the form of acceptance. Acceptance that she will never take accountability. Acceptance that she will never meet you at the emotional depth you offered. Acceptance that she built connection on conditions, not care. With this clarity, you stop arguing in your mind. You stop replaying old conversations. You stop hoping for understanding. The emotional noise that once filled your days starts to fade. You can breathe again. Your thoughts become your own again. What used to destabilize you becomes something predictable, something familiar, something you no longer feel tied to solving. This clarity does not come with hate. Hate still requires energy, and you no longer give her that energy. You don't want revenge or payback. You don't want to prove anything. You don't want her attention anymore. You simply see the pattern for what it is, and that understanding becomes your release. You can let go without drama, without emotional battles, and without explanation. You stop needing her to validate your worth. You stop waiting for the moment she finally treats you right. You stop attaching your identity to how she reacts. This is the kind of clarity that frees you, not through force, but through truth. Part 7. Emotional Freedom and the Power of Indifference. There is a moment when you notice that the connection no longer lives inside you. It doesn't happen in 1 second. It happens through countless disappointments that finally stack up high enough for you to see everything from a new angle. When you reach that point, indifference becomes one of the strongest forms of emotional freedom you will ever experience. It is not an empty feeling. It is not numbness. It is the quiet realization that nothing she does can pull you back into the cycle again. Indifference means you no longer react. You no longer drop everything when she demands attention. You no longer feel shaken when she tries to provoke an emotional response. You no longer collapse under guilt. You no longer explain every little thing. You no longer defend your point of view. You no longer try to justify why you are hurt. You stop playing the role she assigned you. You stop being the emotional anchor for someone who only showed up when it suited her. When you reach this level of indifference, you do not act out of revenge. You simply move differently. You protect your peace. You guard your boundaries. You reclaim your time. You stop giving her access to your emotional world. And without that access, she loses everything she depended on. She cannot feed on your guilt. She cannot feed on your empathy. She cannot feed on your hope. The entire dynamic that once held you becomes powerless. Indifference is not the absence of care. It is the presence of self-respect. It means you finally understand that your life is yours again. Reclaiming your life and sense of self. Once you break free emotionally, the process of returning to yourself begins. You start noticing small shifts in your daily life. You wake up with a little more peace. You breathe a little deeper. You reconnect with your interests, your hobbies, your friendships, and your routines, things you may have abandoned to keep her satisfied. The version of you that once felt small starts growing again. The version of you that once felt lost starts finding direction. Your confidence returns in quiet ways, then stronger ways, then consistent ways. You begin trusting your intuition again because you finally see how many times it tried to warn you. You begin setting boundaries without feeling guilty because you understand that boundaries are not walls. They are protection. You begin saying no in places where you used to say yes automatically. You begin listening to your own needs before trying to fulfill someone else's demands. Most importantly, you realize that your empathy did not disappear. It just found its way back to the right place, inside you. You learn to give your heart to people who value it, not people who exploit it. You learn to build connections based on mutual respect, not emotional control. And you learn to walk into new relationships with clearer vision and stronger self-awareness. The narcissistic woman becomes a chapter in your past, not the definition of your future. Her behavior no longer shapes your decisions. Her words no longer shape your self-worth. Her presence no longer shapes your emotions. You carry lessons instead of wounds. You carry strength instead of fear. You carry growth instead of confusion. This is what freedom feels like. Quiet, steady, powerful, and completely yours. If you have made it to this point, you have already survived more than you often give yourself credit for. Walking away from a narcissistic woman takes strength you did not know you had. Stopping the cycle takes courage that many people never reach. Choosing yourself after everything you've endured is not selfish. It is necessary. You did not become cold. You became aware. You did not become distant. You became grounded. You did not lose your empathy. You finally protected it. The pain you went through shaped a stronger version of you. One who now knows what real love, real respect, and real peace feel like. You are not defined by the hurt she caused. You are defined by the strength you gained. As you move forward, let yourself heal without rushing. Let yourself grow without doubt. Let yourself trust again when it feels right. You deserve a life where your heart is safe, where your peace is steady, and where your empathy is honored. And every step you take from here is a step toward the version of yourself you were always meant to return to. And as always, because YouTube's algorithm tends to favor videos with strong engagement, if you feel this video has brought you value, a simple like and a quick subscribe would mean so much. It not only helps this message reach more people who need it, but also ensures you will never miss the next video that could make a difference in your journey. Thanks all.